Hi, some times ago I've offered my help on LinkedIn to help communication officers or organizations to solve some of their challenges in communication, things I could address because I have a sort of repository of solutions already I'm giving to people. And I've received a number of private messages. I've been commenting on communication plans, for instance, or answering direct career advices, questions, but I'd like to tackle some of the questions that I've been receiving that could be gathered and very much understood with that particular one. So I'm gonna read my screen and try to talk you through the solution I use myself to solve these sort of challenges, what I train my clients to do. And by the end of the video, so that would last maybe 15 to 20 minutes, there will be a case study of a great campaign I've seen in the public sector that could be also of help. So the question was, I have a challenge about my ability to synthesize information, be effective when I have to present complex information, and able to address different target audiences. So that's a long question, and I think it can be already broken down in 3 subsections. And basically these 3 subsections are how can you synthesize information? So you have plenty to say. How can you make the most of all this material in a shorter version maybe? The second thing is how to present complex information. So I have a very great substance, huge words, maybe it's a committee who prepared it, maybe it's a very expert policy officer, and I have these beautiful things. How can I talk about it? So that's very similar to what in a company you would see an engineer trying to describe the product he's been working on and a marketer trying to sell that product, and you don't do the same thing on both sides in different departments. And the third thing is how can I address different target audiences, which is a very recurring question among everyone I meet. What do I do if I have different target audiences? So the question can call for a very short answer before I develop a better technique. So the first thing is that it's a challenge for everyone in the field. It's why we work as communication officers, as people in agencies, or wherever you work in communication. It's the same challenge for everyone. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that I think you have to know why the tool is produced in the first place. If you don't know why it has been produced, you can't answer these questions at all. So the first possible answer is it to attract a lot of people to the content that did not care about it before. So you're producing something, you want people who were not interested in what you do to come up and get closer to you and get an interest into it. Or is that to help people who are already attracted by your organization or have previous contact to understand something faster? So would you attract people, or would you help a second type of people understand things faster? And the last one would be the first part. Is it for people who are already consuming the material to remember it on the long run? So is it to attract? Is it to make people understand? Or is it to help them memorize it, to retain the information? So that division is amazingly useful when you are dealing with communication, because these are 3 different sequences which are very different. If you think about how you purchase clothes, for instance, you're walking in the street, you're maybe attracted by a shop. That's the first thing. And the message is very simple. It's attractive because it's visual, because it's interesting to you personally, because there are big billboards and you see the image. And once you actually see that sort of attraction, you might remember or not the brand, and you might remember or not the shop, and you might come and visit the shop. So these are 2 very different moments in time. And eventually, if you're in the shop already, what you want is to very quickly access everything there is in the shop, see it, eventually remember it on the long run. If you don't purchase right now, you're gonna come back later and purchase the same thing, or go online and purchase the thing. So these are 3 different moments in time and 3 different types of tools as well. There is a good mental model to help us understand that. And it all starts with, why are we doing this? If you know why you are doing it, then you might find the proper way of doing it. And that's very fundamental. So we're gonna divide everything in attract, or help understand, or remember, okay? So you can call that as well by appeal, attracting by raising the appeal. Help understand is comprehension, and remember is retention. So it looks like that. I divided that into what we call a radar chart. Okay, that's a particular type of visualization, quite handy to understand concepts. So let's say I'm taking a marketing tool, like a poster, for instance, for an event, an invitation, whatever email that act as an invitation. Or I'm taking the category of what we call newspaper articles, editorial material, okay? Or the third one would be academic or scientific reports. So 3 very different type of tools, okay? And different type of objectives as well. So a marketing tool, if I'm building a poster, I'm building a poster for an invitation to an event. Let's take that one. So what would be the most important parameter? I'm putting my poster somewhere on the wall, or I'm sending it by email, or what is the main parameter I'm looking for in a marketing tool? Is it people to be very interested by it, so raising the appeal of it? Or would it be for people to understand a lot thanks to it? Or would it be for people to remember a lot about it? Well, if you think about the classic poster, the first thing you want is to stand out compared to the rest of the tools. So what you want to build the poster for is appeal first. It has to be extremely appealing and much more than anything else. So if you were, let's say, writing an email or sending a beautiful poster image or building a full digital page to attract people and give them motivation, what you want to privilege in there are a lot of visuals. You want striking visuals that gives you a lot of pleasure when you see them as an audience, not to yourself, but for your audience, obviously. And you want these people to be very much appealed by the actual poster. So it looks very much like that. A lot of appeal, okay? Comprehension pretty low because you can't pass a lot of information on this sort of tools, and pretty good retention. You want people to remember they've seen that, so it has to provoke some sort of emotion. What we call a retention is the fact of memorizing your brand, or memorizing the project itself, or memorizing whatever tool you've sent. When you're good at emotion building, actually, people remember better because we tend to engrave a lot of our memories with emotions. So if you're seeing a beautiful commercial on TV that will totally move you and you are gonna maybe even cry, I love this sort of advertising, to be honest. It's a lot of appeal and it's a lot of retention also. You really remember that because it was engraved with an emotion. So if I'm taking editorial instead of marketing this time, so what happens with editorial? I'm having a very different type of tool, okay? And editorial in this case, let's take newspaper articles because that's one good example of editorial, as one function. Is it to appeal to people? Is that for people to remember a lot, or is that for people to understand a lot with a newspaper article? Which one would it be? Try to think about it for a couple of seconds. Okay, so remember a little bit when you read the newspaper the last time. Maybe yesterday, maybe today. How many articles do you remember that you've read? Not that much. The business of a newspaper is not for you to remember, it's for you to come back, because each time you come back, you give your attention on advertising. So actually, the business model of a newspaper is not to sell you remember things, that's great, is come back, that's an addiction. So that's a great newspaper business model. So appeal is amazingly big, and the appeal in the case of a newspaper is not often the image, it's mostly the copy of the title. And if the copy of the title is extremely powerful, you will click like, you know the concept of clickbait, so a title that have been built to click, but any newspaper rework its title dozens of times until it really stands out. So that's a complete construction of appeal with text. And the business model of a newspaper is also very greatly dependent of understanding things. If you can understand new things thanks to a newspaper, new angles, new stories, then you're very much on the line of the newspaper. So we still rank very, very high in appeal, but this time we will privilege understanding over retention, while the marketing tool is actually the opposite. A lot of appeal, and we privilege retention, people remember the brand, and less understanding. So two different type of tools, two different type of construction. How do you raise the comprehension of something? How people understand it better? Well, you have to work really well your text. You have to make it flow in the logic and the structure. If it's a tool like a commercial, for instance, the story has to be extremely powerfully structured. So you have to work with great copywriters to write the story. You can't just write the story yourself if you didn't do that before. Okay, editorial, understanding something means your audience understand it, not yourself. So you have to step out of your own body somehow and think about yourself like it was one of the first time you started talking about this topic. Now, a third tool, I'm training a lot of scientists and engineers as well, and people in startups. And so academic or scientific report, this sort of paper where you have everything included, are a tool of communication as well. For scientists, it's maybe one of their main tools of communication because to connect with their peers or with scientific journals, they need to write these reports. So in this case, why do you actually write such a report? Is it to provoke a lot of appeal? So people are very much directly interested by your report? Is that for people to remember it, so retention a lot? Or is that for people to understand something very deeply? Well, think about it. What is the main business model of an academic or scientific report or a policy-making report, possibly? It's to understand everything very clearly. So the business model is about comprehension. This is what you're selling with it. Is it retention? Well, if you're interested in the topic, yes, you're gonna remember, maybe not totally the paper, but you're gonna remember a big part of it. If it's well written, obviously, but I mean, if you made your job correctly for comprehension, then people are gonna get memories out of it. And in terms of appeal, where do we stand? Well, it's pretty low actually. You want to interest people who've already been in contact with you, who already believe and trust your credible image and think that you share great information. And only there, then they will start reading the report. It's very rare that you come into contact with a new organization and directly read its report, especially if the report is 40, 50 or 100 pages long. So we have these 3 different tools, 3 different configurations, and you've seen each time you basically have somehow like 6 points to distribute. And you're whether in a marketing context, or you're in an editorial context where you want people to understand things, or you're into an academic, scientific context where you want everything to be understood. So let's have a look at some sort of examples as well of exactly what I said. So I took a generic poster on the internet for an electro music festival, right? And you see what is this poster designed for. It's appeal. If you see that particular poster in the street, you might be interested by the colors, by the shape, by the typography. Something will be attractive to you if you're interested by electro music. And they don't want to convert people who are interested in world music or jazz. They want mostly people who are interested in electro, dubstep music in this case, to actually watch the poster. And these people might be interested. So the appeal is very high. The comprehension, there's nothing to understand. It's a festival of music and that's fine and that's enough. And the retention, what do you remember out of it, is, oh, hey, actually, I've actually put my interest onto this poster for a couple of seconds. So I might need to take some sort of action afterwards, maybe check it on the internet again later, or purchase the ticket directly. So what you want is a lot of appeal and a lot of retention if you can. Now let's check what happens in consumer brands. Imagine that you're about to choose a cleaning product and you have this amount of choice among the public, the different cleaning products. Which one do you take? And consumer packaging is extremely built onto appeal. You need to stand out in this crowd. And you see, they're all trying to actually be more appealing than the other ones. We have so many colors now that it's almost the opposite. You notice more the ones in white on the bottom left because people shared their idea that appeal would be only colors and flashy things. And see, if everything is flashy, then you have no contrast anymore. So your way of raising the appeal is to be different from the actual competition. If everyone uses text, use images. If everyone uses images, maybe use text. That's how you understand the concept of contrast in design. Be different from the rest. That's raising the appeal. So a marketing tool, basically, first point, it has to be usually visual, has to be very attractive intuitively. You can't think about it. You have to be attracted immediately. If your tool is not attractive immediately, then you're losing. It cannot be only mental. So the 3 big things in any visual is color first, the first thing we notice, then shape, that's the second thing we notice, and third only content. So your text only come third. The second part is you have to be pleasing or you have to be shocking. You have to provoke a reaction. Pleasing and shocking. People tend to think you have to be shocking or negative to attract the attention. That's not true. That's one part of the spectrum. You can be extremely pleasing. You can be extremely helpful. That's as well a way to attract people. That's raising the appeal. You have to be in contrast, as I said, possibly in the concept or in the visual. It has to be different from the pack. And finally, it has to be simple enough. There's a low need for comprehension. If there's too much comprehension into it, if you are building a sort of Frankenstein tool between marketing and an academic report, you're not going to make it. You have to choose. So a marketing tool is the first step to come in contact with your brand. It might be a quick decision of 5 to 10 seconds, and it has to be well designed. If you look again at posters now, where my eyes are actually going if everyone competes with the exact same tool. In this particular wall, myself, I'll be maybe more attracted to the Mod Club, the one on the middle left, because as well it's more simple, it has more space compared to the other ones which are completely crowded. So visually I'm gonna go much more onto this one possibly, or onto the track on the right maybe, I'm not sure. So let's come back. Marketing, editorial or academic. Let's break down editorial now, and that's the second tool. Usually it's a very, very good tool when you want to tell a longer story and help people understand something. So if I'm taking whatever journal I found on the internet, The Sun in this case, look at that. A lot of appeal again. Blood on his hands, boom. Okay, that's first page of the news. Imagine a little bit, you see that even 5 meters from a distance in the street, and you might purchase, if you're interested, as a target audience, once again, you might purchase this newspaper. But you take any reference newspaper like the Guardian, for instance, and you see a bit how the images and the titles compete for your attention and try to attract you. This first article on Nicaragua is standing on the top high of the what we call above the fold on the website, and it's actually very interesting for you because it's the first article. But if you start scrolling, you might go maybe more onto one of the different images there, or one of the very powerful titles you see. North Korea right abuses likely to be ignored at summit. Boom. Or even what would be Sonic attack fears as more US diplomats fall ill in China. I mean, top right. So that's a way to attract your attention. Again, a newspaper is trying to raise your appeal a lot. That's an addiction mechanism. You come back onto the newspaper, and what they are selling is more understanding of the world. So an editorial, usually as a newspaper article, tends to be textual. The title has to be attractive. So if you're doing whatever, don't put a title that is 15 lines long. It has to be pretty short. And if you can, use words people understand. Not that you understand only yourself, but that your target audience will understand. The image, a copy line in the title, the first 3 seconds are very important to choose in terms of appeal, a newspaper article you're going to read. So it has to be exciting, it has to provoke some curiosity, it has to be powerful in a way. The third thing, deliver more comprehension, faster, and with delight. This is what you're selling when you're writing a newspaper or when you're actually building a very great website with lots of good content. You want to deliver more comprehension, you want to deliver faster if that the person had to read a book to understand the same thing, for instance. And it has to be delightful as one point as well, because you're having a quite high appeal. If you're boring, if you're not interesting for the audience, then you will lose them anyway. And the fourth thing, it's not built to remember, it's built to consume. So what you want is eventually people to remember one thing. You are providing great information and they come back. You don't want them to remember the entire content of the article. That's delight, you know what I mean? It's not something academic. You're not passing an exam right now with that sort of tool. Taking the third type of tool, academic reports. So academic reports, what can I see? I took a random report from one of my clients, the Joint Research Center, so a big 5,000 scientist agency of the European Commission. They are working on wonderful things, and that's kind of the classical type of report they would publish, sometimes with a nice visualization like on the top right, a cartography, I'm not sure what is the topic here, Ecuador in this case, and that's pretty standard. But there's one thing they can do as an academic report, and you remember that the appeal is just 1/3. And so that's possibly raising the appeal so that more people would read this particular report and not a classic report. So in this case, that's a classic report, I would say. And that's another report they actually published called the Urban Water Atlas for Europe, where they try to raise the appeal. So quite powerful illustrations. It's about water. You understand it from the first page. The layout is much closer to a magazine in this case. We don't have a layout of a classic report like the previous one, where you see everything on one line. They broke down in columns. So these columns help relate to a magazine. And each city, in this case, it's a water atlas of how the quality of water rank in different cities in Europe. You have Bologna. And you see on the bottom of the page, so the third page, you see a data visualization. And this data visualization is quite nicely done because every city in the report, I think there are 60 cities maybe, have its own data visualization. So they look like that. And I think that's very appealing. That's raising the appeal compared to a classical report. It's called a radar chart, this one if you're interested. So there are 25 parameters of the data visualization, and the city rank for the quality of its water, the quality of its sewers, a lot of things. But the data visualization is very beautiful. If you're looking at the bottom, I put the small link if you're interested by radar charts as visualization. That's one of them, but there are plenty of possibilities to visualize these sort of things. Radar chart is just quite beautiful, I think. And what happened with that particular report? Well, it's actually the most performing article on the website of the Joint Research Center. And it's been extremely well accepted, downloaded all along the community, because for once, a report had more appeal. Visually, it was more thought through. They were careful into building something interesting. And so in this case, this report, massive download, massive consultation, the website received 2 million hits per month. So when you manage to attract a number of these users, that's a great performance. So that's about raising the appeal of an academic report. Basically, that's one thing you can do with an academic report because the appeal is pretty low. So if you receive a great academic report, think about how you can make it better visually or textually with the title. Has to be accurate, but can be better. Well written. It has to be understandable. A report is complete, it's exhaustive, it's backed up by resources. That's what you're selling primarily. It has to deliver almost complete comprehension of the field, and it is usually reserved to hardcore followers. So in a classic form, the first report matched very well this description. The second one, well, going for more appeal, start to appeal for more audiences as well, and different people. That's where you start to really extend your reach potentially. So coming back to the question, I have a challenge by my ability to synthesize information, to be effective when I present complex information, and I have to be able to address different target audiences. So if I break down the three parts, the two first ones relate a lot to comprehension. Synthesize information, or making it smaller rather than very long pages of text. That's about improving the comprehension of it. And present complex information, that's the same thing. How do you present complex information? By rewriting it in a way that people can understand better, maybe creating mental images, so not visuals, but mental images. If I'm talking about it's a distance, for instance, instead of putting just a number, I'm gonna say it's the same distance than Earth from Moon. That's a mental image, right? And you can relate to that sort of scale. And address different target audiences. How do I do that? Well, there's only one way. Why do you do that product? If you don't know why you're doing that product and for whom you are doing it, well, you can't address different target audiences. The basic parameter in this case is there are 3 different type of tools that address 3 different type of audiences at 3 different moments in time. And sometimes you need to be appealed first by a marketing tool, and then the second step you want to understand better, and in the first step you want to understand everything. But even if you're the same person, that's gonna take a progression, and you can't just put everything in the face of someone and say, hey, read everything, you don't know me, read everything. Which is a lot of time what communication officers do, because they are under pressure of the policy officer to do whatever they say. But don't do that, that's stupid, no one will read the report. To wrap up, So I have a challenge, you remember. I think the best answer in this case I could come up with is understand the difference between producing a marketing tool to attract new people to your brand or material, the difference between a marketing tool and an editorial tool that will help people understand a complex topic but with more ease. So people who are already interested by you somehow or want to understand that topic, so would come through Google search on understanding that, and that's what you offer, an editorial type of communication tool. And finally, eventually, if you want, you can produce a report to help them understand everything, but you can't start with that unless the person is a complete geek. That happens as well. Your policy officers are complete geeks, like an engineer when he talks about a plane he's working on or an electric system. I mean, these guys are complete geeks, and that's great, but they can't talk to the rest of the world. You cannot do the three at the same time, unless you are a genius of advertising and communication. And I'm super respectful of genius. I know some of them. I'm completely in awe with amazing ideas, but I tend to think if you are a genius, you are part of a very small minority. So don't go on to that before you're already very experienced and very good at what you do. This model, I took it from a book called, I can't remember, Infographics something. I'm gonna put the reference on screen. I teach infographics as well, so I like visualization, and that concept was coming from that book, so very good concept. You don't have to read the book to actually get the concept, so that's why I'm doing there. What I would tend to add is that imagine you have only 6 points to distribute. You have 6 points per tool. You have to distribute it between appeal, comprehension, and retention, and you can't do more. If you're a great strategist, and if you're a great creative, and you really thought it through, maybe you get 7 points, but that's exceptional. So if you really spend time, you get 7 points. That's maybe the Atlas of Water, for instance, for the Joint Research Center, that was getting 7 points, but there were 5 people working non-stop for 2 months to make it happen. So imagine the investment of time and money to make it happen. They had to really thought it through. They worked with illustrators who were producing specific illustration just for that particular brochure. I mean, a lot of investment. So that's where you get the 7 points by working harder. I'll finish by that. Some people ask if what I'm recording right now is marketing. Yes, it is marketing, obviously. I'm trying to show the world that I have a lot of great content I've been sitting on for years. It's free to listen, it's free to watch. I don't sell any products. It's just that I'm a bit fed up with sitting on that content and receiving the same type of questions. So I'm trying to help as much as I can with one video instead of 20 emails. And I love to answer emails anyway. But if you have a great new problem, that's beautiful. I'll try to do that regularly. If you stick for the next minute, I'm showing a great case study, as I said, so enjoy. If you want to contact me and send me your problems, you can do that by private messages on LinkedIn, or you can write me at that address, Charles, that's my full name, at 75%.eu, because I believe that creativity is 75% strategy. If you don't have a strategy, you can't be creative. So what I'm gonna do is push a strategy on this sort of videos, so it might help you become creative. The case study I'm showing now is for the Febelfin, so the Federation of Banking in Belgium. It was done by the agency Duval Guillaume. It's an old campaign, and now it's maybe 2013 or 14. It looks old, it's only 3 years old, but you're gonna see it's amazing. The concept is amazing, and it's really appealing first. Secondly, you understand the massive load with it, and you will remember it. So this is when genius of advertising actually do something, they do it at that level. Enjoy, and do not hesitate to comment. And if you can like it, that means it will be shared with other people on LinkedIn or other channels. So it helps more people. And a lot of people have the same question. So just by liking it, you're already offering that particular content to someone else, possibly. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Dag Fien. Dus kan je doen. Voilà. Ik zie zijn school. tegen Antwerpen.
Ja,
Insecten.
dat blieft?
Ik voel 2 insecten op je rug. Kan dat?
Ja, vlinders.
Slovenie?
Zo, hè.
Een moto. Oranje.
Pas erop.
Zenit.
Oui, oui, bien.
Je hebt een vriendin. Julie de... Met wie?
Ja.
Een boeiend liefdesleven. 3, 4 zelfs.
De vierde, daar zwijg ik meestal over, dus dat weten niet veel mensen.
Hoe is het met je spierscheur? Maison rouge, balkon, blanc. Ja. Ik zie geld, ik zie transacties. Maar kent je rekeningnummer van buiten? Ik denk dat ik het wel weet. Je staat wel negatief op je bankrekening.
Ja?
9-7. Last month you spent €200 on alcohol. Vorige maand €300 aan kleding gespendeerd. 8.
Ja.
5. Voor een huis dat van eigenaar gaat veranderen. €795.000.
Ja, maar eigenlijk.
41.
Ja.
Is dat juist?
Ja, dat is juist. Oh my god. Oh nee. Ah, dat is, ik weet niet hoe eng.